Welcome to the reading of Turning 25 on my 52nd birthday. This is a story of my life right after my divorce as I grew into a new woman. Please comment any questions on the video below. I'll get back to them as soon as I can. And thank you so much. Please like and subscribe also. Thanks. The beginning of the work week was rather busy. Veronica had clients in the office that week. She set up meetings with the managers of the accounting and credit and sales. She needed to make sure with her training schedules would work with their employees. It was a lot of fun. She really enjoyed putting schedules together and to organize the training materials to meet each client's needs. She knew she was right on schedule and she was moving in the right direction with what the company would need to have their new system run smoothly and exactly how they needed it to run. On Tuesday, late morning, she received a text from Rick. He wanted her to come see him at lunch. He said, "I want to videotape you with my dick in your mouth. I want you here now." Veronica was a little shocked, but she knew exactly where this was leading. What was she to do? She really shouldn't do this. She really was going to leave sick again. She was willing to put her job in jeopardy. Yes, she was. She told her boss she was very sick and let her clients know that she had to leave sick that day. She returned his text saying that she was on her way. When she arrived and he let her in, he didn't say a word and just began undoing his pants. She looked at him straight in the eyes. She had a pleading look in her eyes. He said, "You told me I could record you," and she couldn't help but slightly panic. Yes, she did say she would let him record her, but at the moment her heart was beating so hard and loud she thought she was going to explode. But as always, she didn't hesitate. She went to her knees and put his dick in her mouth. She enjoyed the act. She really did. When she first started, he let her have her way, perform the way she enjoyed it. But it didn't take long as he began thrusting and moving faster and faster. She could hardly breathe. It was almost like he was choking her. This wasn't as much fun. She would get so out of breath it had to stop. At one point, she looked up at him with another pleading look in her eyes. She didn't think she could do this. She felt like she was going to just cry. He kept moving so hard and fast. She wasn't enjoying it for a minute. It was almost like rape, except for the fact that she was allowing it. She may have looked at him and said with her eyes, "Please stop," but she never said it aloud. She couldn't. How would that make her look? He would never want anything to do with her again, so instead she allowed herself to continue and kept allowing herself to be enslaved with the situation. Not once did she blame Rick for making her feel enslaved or making her feel inferior. After all, she had free will. At any time, she could have said no to him. He never once put a gun to her head. He never even threatened her ever in any way. This was all her. She was allowing it to happen. Here she was, 51-year-old woman, allowing a man to empower her when there is nothing that she will get out of it other than sex, and mostly one-sided sex. Rick texted her later that evening, letting her know that he loved that she would do whatever he asked. He also said that he loved the fact that she would leave work to give him a blowjob. Veronica could only think, "Hey, look, you got two. Boy, aren't you lucky." But of course, she went right back into her "I'll do anything for you" mode. This was such a damn roller coaster ride. Part of her did think it was fun. No doubt the danger of it was all exciting. She went home and continued to drink too much. It was a pretty sickening feeling. He was getting whatever he wanted, but all she really wanted was sex. And that certainly wasn't happening. Tuesday was a blowjob when he ordered it. Sunday prior was sex in her ass. This was not good. She really needed to figure out a way to just tell him or live with the selfishness. It truly would be different if he made just a small effort to connect with her sexually a little more often when he was in town. She continued to drink, and this night was one of those nights where she began crying. She curled up in her little corner of her room on the floor and just kept crying. Boy, these times were starting to come a lot more frequent. Every time they did, all she could do was think about being held by a man. What was really quite interesting, she never pictured the man holding her to be Rick. This was a perfect example of how messed up she was. She was so freaked out for the sex, she was allowing a man to totally empower her with his wishes. Veronica arrived at work the following day not feeling good about herself. Not only was she allowing herself to be taken advantage of, she was also beginning to drink too much. She always loved to drink with her friends and have a good time, but drinking alone, like she had been was getting to be a little too much. She was starting to crave wine during the day. It took a lot for her not to have a glass of wine during her lunch hour. But she couldn't risk that. At least she was realizing that she could lose her job if she was caught drinking during the workday. It was very hard for her to focus. She was trying to conduct the training sessions that were lined up for the entire day, and just getting through an hour was very hard. She was actually hoping that the training classes would take her mind off the episode yesterday. Then when she was alone, she would think about having him in her mouth and would smile. Anxiety to happiness. What the heck was going on inside her head? She enjoyed the act, but she did not enjoy that she felt like if she didn't do what he asked, she wouldn't have him again. Back to that again. 1 minute smiling, thinking how fun it was, to the next minute feeling like a pushover. Why couldn't you just go with it? How many women can just sleep with a guy and that is fine, no worries, because there will always be someone else? She worried about the someone else part. During a break, she saw a text from Rick. He was telling her about an issue he's having with one of the employees at work. It was one of those times where they discussed normal stuff. This did not take her mind off of him. She was so wanted to talk to him about how she felt about being taken advantage of, but the training and the issues discovered during the training got her brain working at hyperspeed. She was in her element now. She would muster up all her ideas, make notes, talk very fast until she had her mind wrapped around the issues. Once she had her ideas straight in her head and the pros and cons of how to fix this, she then started her methodical thinking. How everyone and everything would be affected by the change she wanted to see take place. She didn't have very long, so needless to say, she wasn't able to talk to Rick about how frustrated she was. Her last training session ended about 2:30 in the afternoon. She decided to put her thoughts down on paper so she would remember to tell him everything she needed. She didn't know when she would see him again. She decided to text him all her thoughts. She put everything into her little memo pad and then sent it to him as a text message. It was pretty long. She let him know she was not trying to make him feel guilty or trying to get him in bed, but that she had really felt like everything that had happened was pretty one-sided. He said that that was not his intention and that he promised he would make it up to her. They began texting a little bit. She also reminded him at one point she was disappointed because they had discussed having some bondage episodes, and that never really happened. They messaged about this for a little bit. She talked about how she would like to be tied up, and she wouldn't mind some forcefulness. She told him rough play was fine, but she didn't want to be choked and hit with a fist. Forceful holding, slapping was all fair game. She told him that was really important to her. She told him that she wanted to have some time on top also. Sitting on him made her feel excited. Veronica made sure she told him that she was not going to let him forget, that she would remind him kindly until it happened. That was how much she wanted this. This night, she did not have much to drink. After all, she needed a break from the alcohol. They texted for only a couple hours, and she decided to take a bath. She daydreamed about their next sexual encounter, and she thought, how am I going to remind him politely about this? That was all it took to make her feel good again, but she did believe that they would have sex again. It seemed that he really wanted to have this, to have some rough play also. So this actually was the first time she was not worried about what he said would happen. She did have to pour a little more wine. It was still early and she could not force herself to sit down. So what happens to Veronica when she's really happy? She starts to dance, throw some music on and just start moving. No wonder she was losing weight. She was dancing more than she was eating. It felt really good. I will say on this chapter, dancing was my release. I mean, it just made me happy. It made me feel good to be able to move again. It made me feel sexy. It made me feel sensual. It was helping in the healing process a lot about how I felt about myself. So this dancing not only was helping me lose weight, and it was, but it was also allowing me to let my body move and to feel comfortable with it moving in a sexual way or a sensual way. So often we don't do that, you know. I mean, I was having enough issues about feeling sensual when I was having sex, and that stinks because that's where you should feel that way. But the dancing was really helping with that. So, because I was dancing alone and nobody was looking or watching or saw, and I could just like meld into the music. The other thing too, in the other chapter we talked about him being a little bit on the rough side. It was different rough than what she wanted. She wanted the, she really wanted to try the bondage being tied up. She'd always wanted to do that. It was like something that she always wanted to try. But you really have to be careful about who you try that with. And she did know that she could trust him in that way. I know it seems like that one time he wanted it rough, but it was different because it wasn't discussed. It was just rough. It wasn't talked about ever. This was going to be different. So, and she wanted that to try that. And it was, as we'll see, that was a big breakthrough for her too. So that was chapter 17.